Yeah, this is just a video on my 2013 Gasgas EC300. I've just modified a few bits and pieces. I'm going through the bike. This will be part of a series of videos, but anyway, I'm just going through the bike, and there's a couple of things that I've picked up on that drew my attention, and looking to make this thing run as clean as possible. You know, being a 13 model, not really interested at this stage in a TPI bike, but if I can get a carburetted bike to run fairly sweet and make plenty of torque, I think that'll be more than enough to ask for. So I've in going through the bike, pulling it apart, checking a few things. I'll probably start with the carburetor. I've got a 05 EC300 Gasgas, and I did this carburetor modification where I put a brass plate in the carburetor that increases velocity up to half throttle, pretty much where all the good for climbing hills and torque and stuff. So I've put this in the carburetor, made a little tool to cut it accurately, and at the back here it's got another section there where you can see the plate runs through, and then once the thing's at half throttle, it will the velocity through the carburetor should be pretty strong, and I'm hoping that relates to a little bit more torque for the bike. And I'll muck around with some needles. I'm looking towards probably a Suzuki needle, what are they, NDEW or something like that. Look at the three taper Suzuki needle in it. I'm hoping I'll put that out in another video when I get it running, and my final configuration with jets and needles and such. But that's the carburetor mod at the moment. It's pretty basic. It's a little bit detailed. You've got to be just very careful when you cut the carburetor, but it's all good. The next thing that drew my attention was the reed valve. I pulled the reed valve apart just for an inspection, and anyway, what happened was that I was quite shocked at how restrictive the manifold was on the reed block, the V43. So anyway, even the side that goes towards the carburetor, it's not even 38 mil. I think it was under by 1.5 mil or something like that. So you've got that restriction there. But then by the time it got to this end of the manifold towards the reed block, it was horrendously small. If you know your EC300s and you're familiar with this part, you can see that I've opened it up quite substantially, and really worked on the short side radius here, the inside turn basically. The outside turn's a nice shape, should flow well, but the inside radius was hideous. I'm sure there's some horsepower to be found there, and I've ported that to pretty much, it's a nice shape. And same with the reed block. Itself, the plastic component, that's the inside radius. Hang on, point the camera properly. There's the inside radius there, and as you can see, I've cut that. That's open by a fair margin. You know, there's quite a few millimeters taken out of that, but ultimately when it goes together, the shape or that inside radius is quite nice, and pretty much it exposes all the reed pedals to the intake. Point the thing right way. So yeah, so I'm hoping just through this little fiddle fart sort of thing I've done will improve the power of this thing. I'm looking for torque, I'm not looking for big power, I'm looking for clean lineal power out of this thing, and I believe I can get it with the right combination of needles and jets. Probably the next thing that came to my attention, and this being a 2013 Gasgas, is linkages, linkage bearings and all the other dramas. This bike has the one-piece dog bone, and it's kind of unique. It's a different size to the 11 and 12 model, I believe. The pin for the dog bone is longer. I think it's around 93 mil long, and you can see that it's a little bit sad. I bought a 2011 kit hoping that the pins would be the right size, but that's not going to happen. But I thought, well, while I'm at it, I'll put some grease nipples in this thing, Zerk fittings, whatever you want to call them, just to help with maintenance and maybe make things last a little bit longer. And pretty much what I've done on the inside of this, if I can do it this way with some light, put the grease fitting there, so once it's assembled should be like that. But on the inside I've got the die grinder, and I have ground a section out of that, so that my plan is to put a center bearing in this one, in the dog bone, and I've got a carbide burr and just put a little a trough in there so that the grease can go past that center bearing left and right and grease the outer bearings too, or that's the theory. So I don't know if it's not coming up too well on camera, but anyway, that's what I've done. And pretty much I've done the same with the other section of the linkage. Just grease nipple in that, comes straight through. That'll have two bearings in it, so it doesn't need any internal modifications like the other. And while I was at it, I thought I might look at the bearings that these things use, and factory they use a 16 mil width bearing, and I thought, oh, well, that's all right. I mean, it's probably not great for the dog bone. As you can see, all the loads on these two surfaces, and I'm thinking, well, what I may well do is go with a wider roller cage bearing, which is there. It's the HK2220. So it is a wider bearing. I think this is 16. I think this will be a 20. I think, yeah. So anyway, but a little bit more bearing surface, maybe carry a little bit more load, maybe not chop out the bushes so much, and then with grease nipples and all the rest of it, should be good. Curious fact that my old 2005 bike here, in the linkages, it has these has the O-ring setup in the linkages, and to this day the linkages in that thing are perfect. I check them, grease them, and maintain them, but ultimately the O-rings seem to be really efficient at not letting any water in and keeping the debris out. So looking at that, and this bike, the 13 bike, had some of the linkage bearings had O-rings, and those pins, in fact that pin, that top pin that went to the swing arm, is perfect. This pin and this pin was using seals, so the seals are not as good as putting in the holding the water out, moisture and debris. So I'll be putting this back together with O-rings instead of the seals, and bit of luck that'll have some more success with that. So yeah, that's that part of it. This thing will probably, well, it is getting a Scott steering damper. This is actually a Honda part. It's very close to the Gasgas part, and basically these where it mounts to the top triple clamp this is a fraction wide. I don't want to quote the difference between the Gasgas and the Honda, but it's very close. And in fact, I'm just going to get in there with a burr, and I'll probably move these holes out just a fraction, and that will go straight onto the Gasgas top triple clamp, and then Scott's damper will go here below the bars, which is the way I probably prefer to mount them. And then yeah, the stem off the frame, and yeah, so that's where it is at the moment. I'll do other videos to once it's all together and this and that. But anyway, at this stage, this is where we're at. We're just fiddling and fussing around with a few things, and yeah, so that's my discovery so far of the 2013 Gasgas EC300R. In fact, I'm just mucking around with wheels and tyres and stuff, and this thing's got I'll have a new. I've just put a new disc on it because the old disc was a bit wobbly. This one's, I put the tubeless system in it. I really like it. The traction and the way the bike works with the tubeless setup, it's a much better thing than tubes. I wouldn't know about mooses, but that's out of my league. And probably the only other thing that this thing's going to get is probably a gear change, and that's got a the 50 rear on it, the Super Sprock 50 rear, so that'll make it a little bit more lively all the way through the range. And potentially the theory is with the gearing and the torque and stuff like that, and the tyres that will grip onto anything with little to no pressure, she should be a pretty good hill climbing bike. So anyway, so that's all I've got for the moment. I'll continue on, and I'll get all this stuff together, and it should pan out pretty interesting. So anyway, I'll leave it there, and I'll put out another video soon. Cheers.